I see the chickens. Push! Push it! Oh. Push it! Oh. 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 Hello friends, welcome back to Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So it is actually evening, getting close to sunset, and I've had a very busy day today. One of the things that I did was I drove into Fort Smith, went to the hardware store, lumberyard, to get materials to begin the first of the fall projects. Now that the weather has cooled down, it's time to work on all of the things. But I'll talk about my first project here in just a minute. But first, one of the things that I did this week was I came out here with some spray paint and marked off a few trees. This area right here is going to be the future garden. However, got a few trees that need to come down. Namely, right back there, the sun's kind of shining through it, but there is a giant multi-trunked oak tree right there that blocks a lot of light, and I need that one to go. I'm also going to have this one come down because it leans over the future garden area, and frankly it doesn't look like the healthiest of pine trees, so we'll have that one gone. Hi Nubsy. Hi buddy. You following me? So additionally, there was a tree right here that was deader than a doornail. We cut that thing up into pieces, and it's in this pile right here. I had another great big pile, but I burned that down this week, which if you follow me on social media, you saw the flames in one of my reels that I did on Instagram. This tree right here, also deader than a doornail. We cut off all of the lower branches, and we will cut this one down when we have a rope handy. We just didn't have one out here with us when we were out here cutting stuff down. So I'm pretty sure that this was maybe an apple tree. It was some sort of fruit tree, but pretty sure it was an apple tree because the branches and everything looked just like the apple trees I had planted in Alabama. But again, deader than a doornail. So we will take that one down, but with rope, because let's see, well, you can't really see them, but right there is the power line, and the power line goes out there to the road, and that tree is really tall. It's actually taller than the lines. So we can't cut that one down until we've got a rope to pull it in the direction that we need it to go. But this giant multi-trunked oak is definitely beyond my capabilities. That's why I have it marked. And I also went ahead and I marked these 3 trees right here, just for good measure. And it looks like somebody had my spray paint. Look at that. That's funny. I didn't notice that. I'm going to take those, have those ones taken down also. But basically, I'm just kind of clearing out this area, getting rid of a few of the trees, selectively getting rid of some trees, so that we can start working on the garden beds and building this area. There's also a really gigantic pine tree over there that is going to come down, and I'll show you why. So it is a humongous pine tree. You see, it is infested and rotting at the bottom. So, considering how big this tree is and the condition that it's in, it needs to come down. But again, power line is right there. So I took photos of all of the trees that I need down, and I sent the photos to an arborist that is here in the area that comes highly recommended, and I'm waiting on an estimate for that. Depending upon the price, dog's barking, depending upon the price, I might have them take down a couple more trees, but we'll start with those because, you know, I'm really anxious to start building the garden beds, but the trees need to come down first. There's no point building garden beds when the trees aren't down. I may end up landing on the garden beds and then just destroying my work, right? Let me go show you what the first project is going to be that I will be starting in the morning. Girl, you're looking rough. You poor thing. You look like a naked neck chicken. You better grow them feathers quick, honey. It's fixing to get cold. What a hot mess you are. Alright, so that brings us to the project. There's several projects that I'm hoping that we will get accomplished this fall and early winter. One of which, as I mentioned, is the garden beds. The second, but the first I'm getting started on, is the chicken coop. So when we were in the process of moving, I was, doing runs with U-Hauls and coming here, spending about a week or so working on things, going back to Alabama, doing some things there, loading up U-Haul, coming back here, and this just went on and on for weeks. But while I was here, I worked on getting up quick, simple animal shelters because our Arkansas homestead here had no animal infrastructure whatsoever. And so one of the very first things I did was I built a hoop coop, a chicken coop that was simply cattle panels, wood frame, some perches inside, heavy canvas tarp over the top for shelter. Simple, but it did the job. That said, it's time to build a real coop. The cold weather is coming, and while the temporary coop that they were in was great for the hot weather, tons of airflow, and they could be nice and relatively cool in the summer heat, that is not going to be the case soon. We are already getting into the low 40s. I mean, this morning, I believe it was right at 40 degrees, and so it is time. I contemplated what kind of coop I wanted to build. I've built several coops over the years. The first coop I built at the Alabama Homestead was kind of like an elevated shed. I built it up on cinder blocks. That way the chickens would have a place underneath that they could go for shade, and it worked out great. Now, I did kind of redo the roosts inside after a short period of time. because I just didn't like how I had set them up initially. But it was a great coop. I think we averaged about 25 chickens in there. But over time, you know, chicken math happens, and we needed another coop. And so I had devised a movable coop because at the time we were doing rotational pastured chickens, and I wanted a coop that I could move around. So I had come up with an A-frame chicken sled, and I loved this chicken coop. Now we averaged about 15 chickens in there, and what I loved about this coop is it was completely movable. Now it was heavy, so while yeah, you could probably do it by hand as a two-person job, generally we just hooked a ratchet strap to it and pulled it with the tractor or with the truck, and it just slid across the ground. It worked great. Originally we were going to bring that coop with us here to Arkansas, but I think it was just going to be an ordeal to move, and so I actually gifted it to a good friend of mine who was wanting to start keeping chickens for the first time, and so it ended up at her place. So over time, I decided to start raising Icelandic chickens, and I wanted them to have, you know, a completely separate coop. I didn't want them to be with the other ones because I was wanting to raise a flock of exclusively Icelandic chickens. And so we turned the A-frame coop into the Icelandic coop and had them out away from all of the other chickens. We kept them out by Sophie and Amos. That way they could do their chicken thing. They would eat the bugs, you know, all that good stuff. And that worked out great. However, the original chicken coop really just wasn't big enough for all our chickens. And so we built a third coop, and this was more of a traditional chicken coop that you could walk in. It was built on the ground. It had a great big window in the front with hardware cloth that we could open up in the summertime. There was a shutter across it that we could close at night in the wintertime to keep them warm in there. It had ventilation on both sides. It was a really good coop. I think it was my favorite of all of the coops, just because it was easy. You know, I could walk into it without having to duck or anything like that. And so when it came time to figure out what kind of coop I wanted to build here, I discussed it with Mr. Smith because for a number of reasons, which I won't get into, we don't want to dig into the ground to sink posts like we did for our third and big coop there in Alabama. And so, you know, I contemplated doing one that was elevated off the ground with cinder blocks as the foundation, like our first coop there in Alabama. But instead have decided that we are making a foundation, a base of railroad ties, and I'll explain how this is going to work as I start building it, which will be in the morning because as you can see, I'm losing light. But I went today and I got all of the materials to begin the framing for the coop. I've got all of the hardware, the posts, and a whole bunch of 2x4s. And so in the morning, I will get started working on it. Let the projects begin. Once I get all of the frame together, then I'll go back to the hardware store and get the siding and the roofing materials. So, tomorrow morning, bright and early, weather permitting, which the weather report is looking really good for construction, we are going to get started on this. And I'm sure the chickens will be happy to be in a nice, big, solid coop. So, that is it for today. Thanks for hanging out with me here a little bit this evening at the Arkansas Homestead. My name is Constance from Cosmopolitan Cornbread, and I'll talk to y'all next time.